Well, folks, here we again for the weekly forecast. Now, as we head into the big holiday weekend, of course, the big item on everybody's mind is, will we continue to see some of the scattered thunderstorm activity that hit more western Nebraska and miss much of eastern Nebraska? And will we also see an increase in temperatures as we head into the pollination period? You know, from the Drought Monitor standpoint, we've now seen an increase in abnormally dry conditions in the western Corn Belt. And unfortunately, some of the areas that seen the good precipitation in western Nebraska were visited by, unfortunately, the white combine. But in eastern Nebraska, where we desperately need some of that precipitation to alleviate some of the heat stress, we're just not getting a well-rounded precipitation events in the region. Although they're scattered, some are being lucky. Most people are being left high and dry. So as we go through this weekend, there's a couple other chances for precipitation, and we're going to need to see this precipitation because, as you see from the latest drought monitor that takes us through Tuesday morning of this week, we have expanded the abnormally dry conditions to south central, southeast, and central Nebraska, with portions of east central Nebraska also included in that. And we've seen some relaxation of the abnormally dry conditions to our east. The good news is there's several more waves projected to come through the region that may give us an opportunity for precipitation. The bad news is, as we get into next week, we start to see a warming trend as the ridge starts to build back in. The good news is, as you look out farther into the future, we do not see a blocking ridging pattern to bring the heat in sustained fashion over the Central Plains out to the 2-week period. So we're seeing continuation of warmed movement to cool, warm to cool, and that's a pattern that does offer us chances for precipitation. So when we look at the upper air model for today, we can see that we have a trough over the Great Lakes region. You'll notice this red area here. This is an area of maximum lift, showing that the models are indicating we should see another precipitation event develop during the day today, and that will move toward the southeast and will include portions of northern Nebraska or northern Kansas and southeast Nebraska. The heavy precipitation lines up right at the Kansas border, so any northward drift would give us an opportunity for some significant moisture, at least across some of the areas that are being shown as abnormally dry. As we go into Sunday, we still see some of this residual troughing pattern across eastern Nebraska, so there is again the opportunity for some carryover thunderstorm activity, particularly across southeastern Nebraska, and a little bit of isolated pop-up thunderstorm activity across central Nebraska. Now, as we go into Monday, all of that energy moves to our east. It looks to be a very good day for the 4th of July holiday. Doesn't look like being any inclement weather that will impede the 4th of July fireworks display, but at the same token, we start to see the ridge building back in, bringing the heat into our region. As we go into Tuesday, that ridge remains firmly in plant, so we're going to be back up into the upper 80s, low 90s. And as we get into Wednesday, the ridge builds even farther to the north, and I would not be surprised that we'll start to visit the upper 90s region across central and eastern Nebraska. As we go into Thursday, now we start to see a trough pushing into our region, but we're still going to be in the influence of subsiding air where we're indicated by this blue, so we're going to continue to see warm temperatures, and by Friday, we start to increase our chances for thunderstorms. And as we go into next week, and this looks to be a weather maker for us in terms of precipitation, the 8 to 14-day forecast keeps the warm conditions in place and actually moves them to the east. And as we look at the precipitation, we see that eastern Nebraska is on the western periphery of above normal moisture.